experience different kinds of ASMR and different ways of creating content that's a little less labor intensive. And I think that I may want to integrate this as like a permanent fixture on my channel. Doing, a couple lo-fi episodes here and a couple of hi-fi episodes there, and kind of splitting it up like that. But that's all in the future. What you need to know right now is I don't have the ability to record audio using my traditional mic, so we're going to be using this mic and my phone because that's what I've got going right now. And I still want to make content. I don't want to stop creating just because I don't have the traditional technology needed to do it. I can adapt. We can figure things out. And part of that is today's video of reading one of my vintage books. So fun. I think it was one of my earlier videos. I think it was probably my second video, where I kind of showed off my accidental collection of vintage books, where I just keep going to, bookshops and thrift stores and finding these cool vintage books and buying them, and then I never touch them again. I buy them and then they sit in a box and I never touch them again. But I am determined to change that starting today with The Little Lame Prince. This is a book that I actually picked up. I picked it up because it looked vintage, but then whenever I was flipping through it, I was like, this actually sounds kind of good. I'm not going to tell you what it's about because we're going to start reading it. And to be honest, I don't really know myself because it doesn't have any kind of synopsis. The back is just a copy of the front, the exact same picture. And then obviously on the inside, it doesn't have any kind of flap, I suppose, that has the plot right there. So I figured that we could share this story together, and I could keep you company as you go to sleep and read you a little bedtime story, or a bedtime chapter. I think we're only going to get through one today. So, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, another part of this that really charmed me was the handwritten note right on the inside cover. Chucky Cunningham. It's very small writing, so I can't trace it very well. On his 5th birthday, from his grandmother, November 30th, 1934. Just about 10 years after this particular book was published. Right on the inside, you can see a full color picture of what I'm presuming to be the prince. He is sitting forlorn by an open window with his head in his hands as he clutches an open book. The caption is, but he kept all these thoughts to himself and just sat still, devouring his new books till he had come to the end of them all. This is printed on a slightly sturdier, glossy paper. I'm not sure the name of it, but it is, I guess, slightly sturdier and better than the traditional pages, I suppose, to keep the integrity of the photo itself, or the illustration, I guess. Not photo, wasn't taken. Copyright 1924 by the Southfield Publishing Company. The Little Lame Prince, Chapter 1. Yes, he was the most beautiful prince that ever was born. Of course, being a prince, people said this, but it was true besides. When he looked at the candle, his eyes had an expression of earnest inquiry, quite startling in a newborn baby. His nose, there was not much of it, certainly, but what there was seemed an aquiline shape. His complexion was a charming, healthy purple. He was a round and fat, straight-limbed and long, in fact, a splendid baby, and everybody was exceedingly proud of him, especially his mother and father, the king and queen of No Man's Land, who had waited had waited for him during their happy reign of 10 years, now made happier than ever to themselves and their subjects by the appearance of a son and an heir. That was all one sentence. I want to point out, this is kind of a fixture in older books, but that one sentence stretches from this part of the paragraph here to here. That is one sentence. That is one sentence right there. It is basically, that is like the definition of a run-on sentence. It is continued by multiple hyphens and two semicolons and 3 hyphens. And how many commas? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 commas. I'm sorry for the tangent, but that is ridiculous. Moving on. Let's keep going. The only person who was not quite happy was the king's brother, the heir presumptive, who would have been king one day had the baby not been born. But as his majesty was very kind to him, and even rather sorry for him, insomuch that at the queen's request he gave him a dukedom almost as big as a county, the crown prince, as he was called, tried to seem pleased also, and let us hope that he succeeded. The prince's christening was to be a grand affair. According to the customs of the country, there were chosen for him 24 godfathers and godmothers, who each had to give him a name and promise to do their utmost for him. When he came of age, he himself had to choose the name and the godfather or godmother that he liked best for the rest of his days. Meantime all was rejoicing. Subscriptions were made among the rich to give pleasure to the poor, dinners in town halls for the working men, tea parties in the streets for their wives, and milk and bun feasts for the children in schoolrooms. For no man's land, though I cannot point it out on any map, or read any of it in history, was, I believe, much like our own or many another country. As for the palace, which was no different from other palaces, it was clean turned out of the windows, as people say, with the preparations going on. The only quiet place in it was the room, which, though the prince was 6 weeks old, his mother the queen had never quitted. Nobody said she was ill, however. It would have been so inconvenient, and as she said nothing about it herself, but lay pale and placid, giving no trouble to anybody, no one thought much about her. All the world was absorbed in admiring the baby. The christening day came at last, and it was as lovely as the prince himself. All the people in the palace were lovely too, or thought themselves so, in the elegant new clothes which the queen, who thought of everybody, had taken care to give them, from the ladies-in-waiting down to the poor little kitchen maid, who looked at herself in her pink cotton gown and thought, doubtless, that there was never such a pretty girl as she. By 6 in the morning all the royal household had dressed itself in its very best, and then the little prince was dressed in his best, his magnificent christening robe, which proceeding his royal highness did not like at all, but kicked and screamed like any common baby. When he had a little calmed down, they carried him to be looked at by the queen his mother, who, though her royal robes had been brought and laid upon the bed, was, as everybody well knew, quite unable to rise and put them on. She admired her baby very much, and kissed and blessed him, and lay looking at him, as she did for hours sometimes, when he was placed beside her fast asleep. Then she gave him up with a gentle smile, and, saying she hoped he would be very good, that it would be a very nice christening, and all the guests would enjoy themselves, turned peacefully over on her bed, saying nothing more to anybody. She was a very uncomplaining person, the queen, and her name was Dolores. Everything went on exactly as if she had been present. All, even the king himself, had grown used to her absence, for she was not as strong, and for years had not joined in any gaieties. She always did her royal duties, but as to pleasures, they could go on quite well without her, or it seemed so. The company arrived, great and notable persons in this and neighbouring countries, also the 24 godfathers and godmothers, who had been chosen with care as the people who would be most useful to his Royal Highness, should he ever want friends, which did not seem likely. What such want could possibly happen to the heir of the powerful monarch of No Man's Land? They came walking 2 and 2 with their coronets on their heads, being dukes and duchesses, princes and princesses, or the like. They all kissed the child, and pronounced the name which each had given him. Then the 24 names were shouted out with great energy by 6 heralds, one after the other, and afterward written down to be preserved in the state records, in readiness for the next time they were wanted, which would either be on his Royal Highness's coronation or his funeral. Soon the ceremony was over, and everybody satisfied, except, perhaps, the little prince himself, who moaned faintly under his christening robes, which nearly smothered him. In truth, though very few knew, the prince in coming to the chapel had met with a slight disaster. His nurse, not his ordinary one, but the state nurse-maid, an elegant and fashionable young lady of rank, whose duty it was to carry him to and from the chapel, had been so occupied in arranging her train with one hand, while she held the baby with the other, that she stumbled and let him fall just at the foot of the marble staircase. To be sure, she contrived to pick him up again the next minute, and the accident was so slight it seemed hardly worth speaking of. Consequently, nobody did speak of it. The baby had turned deathly pale, but did not cry, so no person, a step or two behind, could discover anything wrong. Afterward, even if he had moaned, the silver trumpets were loud enough to drown out his voice. It would have been a pity to let anything trouble such a day of felicity. So, after a minute's pause, the procession had moved on. Such a procession! Heralds in blue and silver, pages in crimson and gold, and a troop of little girls in dazzling white, carrying baskets of flowers, which they strewed all the way before the nurse and child. Finally, the 24 godfathers and godmothers, as proud as possible, and so splendid to look at that they would have quite extinguished their small godson, merely a heap of lace and muslin with a baby face inside, had it not been for a canopy of white satin and ostrich feathers, which was held over him wherever he was carried. Thus, with the sun shining on them through the painted windows, they stood, the king in his train on one side, and the prince and his attendants on the other, as pretty a sight as ever was seen out of a fairyland. "It's just like a fairyland," whispered the eldest little girl to the next eldest, as she shook the last rose out of a basket. "And I think the only prince the prince wants now is a fairy godmother." "Does he?" said a shrill but soft and not unpleasant voice behind, and there was seen among the group of children somebody, not a child, yet no bigger than a child, somebody who nobody had seen before, and who certainly had not been invited, for she had no christening clothes on. She was a little old woman dressed all in grey gown, grey hooded cloak, of a material excessively fine, and a tint that seemed perpetually changing, like the grey of an evening sky. Her hair was grey, and her eyes also. Even her complexion had a soft grey shadow over it, but there was nothing unpleasantly old about her, and her smile was as sweet and childlike as the prince's own, which stole over his pale little face the instant she came near enough to touch him. "Take care, don't let the baby fall again." The grand young lady nurse started, flushing angrily. "Who spoke to me? How did anybody know? I mean, what business has anybody—" Then, frightened, but still speaking in a much sharper tone than I hope young ladies of rank are in the habit of speaking, "Old woman, you will be kind enough not to say the baby, but the prince. Keep away. His Royal Highness is just going to sleep. Nevertheless, I must kiss him. I am his godmother." "You!" cried the elegant lady nurse. "You!" repeated all the gentlemen and ladies in waiting. "You!" echoed the heralds and pages, and they began to blow the silver trumpets in order to stop all further conversation. The prince's procession found itself for returning, the king and his train having already moved off the palace, but on the topmost step of the marble stairs stood, right in front of all, the little old woman clothed in grey. She stretched herself on tiptoe by the help of her stick, and gave the little prince 3 kisses. "This is intolerable," cried the young lady nurse, whipping the kisses off rapidly with her lace handkerchief. "Such an insult to his royal highness! Take yourself out of the way, old woman, or the king shall be informed immediately." "The king knows nothing of me, more's the pity," replied the old woman with an indifferent air, as if she thought the loss was more on his majesty's side than hers. "My friend in the palace is the king's wife." "Kings have not wives, but queens," said the lady nurse, with a contemptuous air. "You are right," replied the old woman. "Nevertheless, I know her majesty well, and I love her and her child, and, since you dropped him on the marble stairs—" This she said in a mysterious whisper, which made the young lady tremble in spite of her anger. "I choose to take him for my own, and be his godmother, ready to help him whenever he wants me." "You help him!" cried all the group, breaking into shouts of laughter, to which the little old woman paid not the slightest attention. Her soft grey eyes were fixed on the prince, who seemed to answer to the look, smiling again and again in causeless, aimless fashion that babies do smile. "His majesty must hear of this," said a gentleman in waiting. "His majesty will hear quite enough news in a minute or 2, said the old woman sadly, and again, stretching up to the little prince, she kissed him on the forehead solemnly. "Be called by a new name which nobody has ever thought of. Be Prince Dolor, in memory of your mother Dolores." "In memory of?" Everybody started at the ominous phrase, and also at a most terrible breach of etiquette which the old woman had committed. In No Man's Land, neither the king nor the queen were supposed to have any Christian name at all. They dropped it on their coronation day, and it was never mentioned again till it was engraved on the coffins when they died. "Old lady, you are exceedingly ill-bred," cried the eldest lady in waiting, much horrified. "How could you know the fact passes my comprehension? But even if you did not know it, how dared you presume to hint that her most gracious majesty is called Dolores?" "Was called Dolores," said the old woman, in tender solemnity. "The first gentleman caught the gold stick in waiting, and raised it to strike her, and all the rest stretched out their hands to seize her, but the grey mantle melted from between their fingers like air, and before anybody had time to do anything more, there came a heavy, muffled, startling sound. The great bell of the palace, the bell which was only heard on the death of someone in the royal family, and for as many times as he or she was years old, began to toll. They listened, mute and horror-stricken. Someone counted 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 29, just the Queen's age. It was indeed the Queen. Her Majesty was dead. In the midst of the festivities, she has slipped away out of her new happiness and her old sufferings, not few nor small, sending away all her women to see the grand sight. At least they said afterward, in excuse, that she had done so, and it was very like her to do it. She had just turned with her face to the window, whence one could see the tops of the distant mountains, the beautiful mountains, as they were called, where she was born. So gazing, she had quietly died. When the little prince was carried back to his mother room, there was no mother to kiss him, and, though he did not know it, there would be for him no mother's kiss any more. As for his godmother, the little old woman in grey who called herself so, whether she melted into the air like her gown when they touched it, or whether she flew out of the chapel window, or slipped through the doorway among the bewildered crowd, nobody knew, nobody ever thought about her. Only the nurse, the ordinary homely one, coming out of the prince's nursery in the middle of the night to search for a cordial to quiet his continual moans, saw, sitting in the doorway, something which she would have thought a mere shadow had she not seen it, shining out of 2 eyes, grey and soft and sweet. She put her hand before her own, screaming loudly. When she took them away, the old woman was gone. And such finishes the first chapter of The Little Lame Prince. It's just such a charming little book. I think what draws me most to vintage books in particular is just the language with which they're written. I think I accidentally develop a very posh way of speaking me know what you think about the mic, about the setup, about anything, because obviously this is not anything that I'm used to doing. So especially if there are any problems with the audio or the video, let me know so that I can hopefully fix it for next time. And if you have anything, you want me to make a video of, especially in this kind of more relaxed lo-fi style, let me know, because I'm not going to have a computer for a while. So, yeah. That's it. Thanks so much for joining me to indulge me in reading this little book